Welcome to the Small Business Breakthrough Podcast, where every week we're interviewing guests that support the small business industry. Small businesses have a challenge, and that is we just don't know how to create our own brand unless we happen to be in branding. And most of us are not. We are small business owners and we're just trying to get the next customer to come in so that we can serve them in the best way possible. Well, here's something neat. Today, I have a guest that works with small businesses and helps them bring out their brand specifically. And they're very unique into content creation, social media, but it's not just that content. It's also the strategy, which is very important. We talk a little bit about this as we'll go through, but let's jump into the conversation with Rachael Mattice, who's the founder of RM Creative Services. We're going to have a great conversation. Welcome to the show, Rachael.
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. Give us a little bit of an introduction as to what your business is. And we talked, I talked about what you're doing, strategy and content. Let's talk about the importance of that holistic approach because just creating content with no strategy is like throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping it sticks. So give us an introduction to your business and how you help customers not just throw spaghetti against the wall, but help it stick.
Sure. Well, for everybody's listening and watching, it's very nice to digitally meet you. As Jason said, I work with and I amplify brands and artists to stand out from the crowd with strategic content and with social media. And at my agency, I also offer some high level marketing consulting, as well as some different education opportunities that are low cost, specifically to help serve small businesses just like you who are listening to this type of, to this podcast. And when I started my business, I was already working in marketing and social media and content creation. And my agency was just a natural extension of what I was already doing. But before I was working with my agency, I saw a lot of different brands who were trying to piecemeal different aspects of social media together. And there were always a lot of different gaps. There were things that didn't connect, or they were entirely focusing just on social media, but they weren't having any designated place to drive that traffic, whether it was an email list driving that traffic to a website, or to drive that traffic to something like a podcast. So having a holistic and strategic approach is really important for growing your brand, especially in 2024, where there are so many digital opportunities. But it is important that all of the dots connect, that there is intention behind every single thing that you are doing to market your brand. And in my agency as well, there are, of course, with social media trends to take and participate in, but I always advocate for a timeless approach to your content so that regardless of the trends that are happening today, your brand will still be relevant, still be serving customers and clients that you need to, and get you the desired results that you want. And all of that starts with strategy.
Yeah, coming up with that strategy is very, very important. What was the inspiration in that you had when you decided to go out on your own, start your own business? Been doing it now for 5 years or a little over 5 years. And so what was the inspiration behind it? And then to follow that up is what's been the proudest moment that you've had as an entrepreneur in the last 5 years?
That great question, Jason. The inspiration behind my business, it was really small business owners and artists. When I started in my career, I started working in content and I was working in marketing, actually in healthcare organizations full time. And then in the evenings, I was a freelance music journalist and photographer, which is where all of the music, memorabilia, things in my office come from. And so I always had that side hustle in addition to my full time job. And when I was working with artists and small businesses, I saw how much they struggled with where to start. And a lot of the marketing information out there was convoluted. They didn't really know who to trust or to turn to for which advice would apply to them. And frankly, when I was starting RM Creative Services, there was this very standard, almost templatized version of brands that were popular, very pastel pink, very girly, and that's fine. And if you have a brand that looks or feels more like that, or you speak to those types of people, but the brands that I gravitated towards, that I loved, that I wanted to support, were underdogs. They weren't getting the attention, they weren't getting the support, they weren't getting the help that honestly that they deserved. And some of them just had such fantastic products that they were my inspiration. They motivated me. I wanted to help them. I wanted to cheer on the underdogs to start having their place at the table. And so they were really the biggest inspiration behind why I started RM Creative Services and why I still really champion some of those small businesses, some of those underdogs or the artists who really, in my opinion, deserve to elevate and to amplify their brands and again have a little bit of that seat at the table.
Yeah, so business owners out there, in your small business, you just want to provide a product to or service to your customer. Or if you're an artist, it's a matter of you want to create your music, you want to create your art, and that may be a physical painter, maybe a various element. But getting the nuance around the side of having the conversations in how to do that. And it's if you hear the passion in Rachel's voice about that deserve, right? She used the word deserve inside of it because you deserve to be able to get up with anybody that has the money or the expertise or the knowledge around doing branding. And it sounds like Rachel's a great opportunity for you to jump in and have some of those conversations. Rachel, what has been your key to some of the successes that you have had in the last 5 years?
Um, Being persistent and consistent, and I think also just taking calculated risks are all really important. I think when I look back at some of my biggest successes and even my proudest moment, as your last question, Jason, and I realized I didn't get to answering that part. Um, I think of course, because I'm a social media and I'm a marketer, I automatically think about success in the terms of data. Which campaign had the biggest sales, or which social media effort drove the most conversions, or how many as marketers we can talk about successes when it comes in terms of data, until we're blue in the face. But success could also mean for a company getting their first wholesale opportunity. It could be landing their first guest appearance on a podcast, such as yours, Jason. It could be also, making that first $100,000 in revenue. Success is a little bit different for every single brand. But when I think back and look at some of my client success stories and proudest achievements, I think some of them come from the small business owners who had never achieved any sort of marketing campaign in their brand lifespan. A lot of it, they were piecemealing things together, they were doing things sporadically without a strategy. And I'm thinking of a couple of different campaigns that I helped put together. I'm thinking, for example, there's a luxury candle company that I worked with who was getting started off the ground. We shot the brand photography, the video, we put together her digital marketing strategy. We were creating her brand tone of voice, and all of these different pieces are successes and what I think of when I think of my most proud client stories and successful stories, because again, just even the simple day-to-day, accomplishments are noteworthy. And I think that as business owners ourselves, we can be a bit critical and on what we do or our businesses. But really, we have to celebrate some of those daily milestones, those daily successes. And it could be again, as small as getting one of your favorite brands to follow you back on social media, to as big as maybe landing your first $100,000, $200,000 in revenue.
Yes, the celebration along the way is definitely a big part of success. If you've ever opened your laptop ready to grow your business and 2 hours later closed it, realizing you've gotten nothing done, but you've researched office chairs, you've ordered lunch, and you've planned out the next 3 dinners, all the things that you wouldn't typically do to work on your business. Yeah, I've done that too. I'm Jason Pond. I'm the host of the Small Business Breakthrough Podcast, and I want you to achieve your breakthrough. But we do that through the community I built. I built the Momentum Community. The Momentum Community is a place where we meet every week and we talk about your goals, where you want to get with your business, and then we track them. And we use the Momentum dashboard to do that. We make sure you're moving forward every week, and it's accountability like you've never seen in a community forum. I want you to be part of that community. If you want to learn more about it, check out the link in the description below and enjoy the rest of the episode. What would you say differentiates RM Services from its competitors in the field?
I would definitely say our approach to artful yet strategic content that is timeless, but will still get clients the results that they are looking for. Like I said earlier, because I work in social media, I have to stay on top of trends. I have to stay on top of the latest conversations that are happening online and inform clients on how those trends or conversations can impact them in their businesses. But really, I think what sets us apart, and myself, even as a marketer, is that focus on what I call artful, timeless content. Because I heard another social media marketer describe this, and I think it's perfect for kind of the way that content has evolved over at least the last 5 years since 2020, is that content has gotten a bit more rough around the edges. It's been, I guess, a little bit less of a focus on an aesthetic versus just having the message relayed and entertaining your audience, striking some sort of emotional chord with them to get them to resonate and engage with it. Um, but when you look at the content in itself, some of it looks a little bit ugly. And it's not super polished, and that's okay. And especially as small business owners, you have to start somewhere. But I do want brands to eventually graduate into focusing on both that quality and the message. And that is really what gets out your sorry, or really what makes us and my company stand apart, is that we haven't lost that approach. We haven't lost that value on the visual that some people have kind of started to leave behind. But there are so many brands, again, like these underdogs, these incredibly different visual artistic brands, that the visuals do matter to them, especially if you were to tell a photographer who's trying to, get clients for commercial photography projects, wedding photographers, and you told them, to make your content look a little bit more rough. It's a hard pill to swallow for us. So I still very much emphasize timeless content, but also artful content that is still going to be strategic and still get you the results online that you are looking to achieve.
Yeah, and to tie in a little bit of that is it's not, to me at least, it's not about the quality. If it's somebody that's producing quality, right? You don't want to lower the quality of a high quality product for sure. It's a matter of showing how that quality and that there's still humans behind it.
Yeah.
That's but AI is big. is to blame for some of this. If we want to point fingers, I don't really necessarily believe in pointing fingers, but if we talk about that, it's like, how can you show the world that this is a real person that has a passion like yourself for the business, and have that come out inside of the artwork and the social strategy and all of those. And I think your approach is very helps bring that homely and realism around the work. What, the last 5 years has been a ride, right? For all business owners across the board. And we've all gone through various challenges across there. What's one key challenge that you've experienced in the last 5 years that you would say has been a a very memorable one that you've really learned a big lesson from?
Hmm. Um, I think one of the biggest lessons, I mean, I taking a quick pause to think about this because there are a couple different ways I'm thinking about answering this question. Um, I think at a very basic level, a challenge at the beginning of starting my business that I can think of was just getting some of the basics right. Like I had some of the foundations already in place, but for example, learning about all the laws regarding taxes in my state where my business was registered and filing taxes, staying on top of your bookkeeping, what to be sharing with contractors, what they need, from the very foundation, things like because I'm a creative and I wasn't a numbers person, but as a business owner, you have to kind of become a numbers person. You have to learn it no matter what if you're going to be a serious business owner. So I think at the beginning, that was a challenge for me because that wasn't my area of strength. But I think the good lesson behind that, that I think is relevant for all of us is okay, well, this is not something I'm good at, and I need to adapt and take it into my own hands if I'm going to fix this problem and make sure it doesn't happen in the future. And that really can apply to any area of your business, whether it's getting your first legal documents in place or, you know, um, really streamlining your sales process and your sales system and how you're acquiring leads. I think for me, of course, the taxes, that was just one example. But of course, how are you also going to keep up your sales system? How are you going to adapt that to changing times, to changing priorities? Even like you were just talking about, Jason, AI. Because I work in a creative field, I've already had to think about how is AI going to impact my clients and their businesses? How am I going to create services or trainings or workshop opportunities to guide them through some of these changes? So I think no matter what, a challenge is just being able to adapt, um, is challenging. And also having some of that inner maturity to say, like, I need to take accountability for this mistake. And it's my role and responsibility to make sure that we fix this for the future, especially if you have other team members who are relying on you for income or they're relying on you for future opportunities.
Absolutely. Big, big one. I did the same thing. I'm I love numbers, but when it comes to taxes and understanding various elements of accounting, I was not very good at that side of the business for early on. Um, Very good at paying attention to profit and loss, but just not how to appropriately allocate at capitalizations, because I worked in a very capital intensive business, so we were had to depreciate stuff out. It wasn't service based where we're just doing income in, income out type
Mhm.
businesses. So yeah, totally understand. And for those listeners out there, especially if you're a new small business, there's 2, right? You just heard it from 2 different business owners that paying attention to those numbers and those taxes are very important to pay to, uh, being able to and understanding them to a point where you know that you're not getting the short end of the stick at the end of the year when Uncle Sam comes asking, or your state, which is just mini me, Uncle Sam. Um, as we'll call it for this go around. So looking ahead, right? We've had all these changes in the last 5 years. There's more changes to come. What do you see happening inside of your industry in the next 5 years?
Well, um, when it comes to social media, I feel like the next 5 years is too far ahead to project what's going, or to anticipate what's going to happen. Because as Jason and I were talking before we started recording, I know that the podcast is going to come out a little bit later, but just this past weekend, of course, because I work on social media, I had to stay on top of the news regarding TikTok, what was going to happen with TikTok, the future of it, how it was going to impact businesses. So, when it comes to social media and the future of what social media is going to entail, I'm not sure, because at this point, there is so much up in the air. There is so much that's even changing over at Meta and some of these other apps that I do think there is going to be. I do think there is going to be a change as far as how people share their information, and their information regarding their businesses, and how their customers are going to receive that. But as far as other areas of marketing unrelated to social media, I think AI, of course, is going to make a big impact on all of our businesses. But especially from a creative side, you can, of course, choose to look at maybe the negative side of it, which is, from a photographer, and we were just talking about AI art, you could say, well, this photographers could get upset that AI is taking over the value of what they do. But instead, to try and use a proactive angle to that, how can photographers use it strategically to still share the value of what they do to their customers, but also streamline their own business? So I do think AI is going to impact a lot more of what we do in marketing and a lot more of what we do in running our businesses. But more and more, at least for myself and other members of my team, we are finding ways to use it responsibly, ethically, to also streamline our businesses. Um, and yes, I'm just trying to think of what else, but I know at least AI is the biggest. Is still one of the biggest factors, I think, looming over all of our brains, and just how it's going to change how we do things, how we communicate with others. But it's not going anywhere. Just like social media, we're going to have to adapt to it. We're going to have to learn how to use it to our advantage. And of course, at the end of the day, it's still going to be up to us if we want to use AI ethically, and to make sure that we continue to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And there's a point to where you could say we're going to be on the, it's, well, you either got to get on the train or get off the train or stay off the train. And I think it's a matter of everybody really should get on the train. But to give an example, I know farmers these days, small farmers that still don't use technology at all
Mhm.
to do their business, and they're still successful. They'll that it, the that business will change dramatically when they pass, but it's still an element of that. They just decided, I don't want to deal with technology. It's too complicated, and we're going to keep doing things how we've always done things, and live the life. So it has been such a great conversation, and we're ready to jump into the tail end here and run through our lightning round. We Everything's meant to be light, brevity, quick hitting questions. And we have a little bonus because the very last question, you've already answered it. It was built inside of the rest of the podcast. We decided to go with it. So it'll be a little bit simpler. But let's go with coffee or tea to start with.
Coffee,
About cats or dogs?
both.
Both. Hey, okay, there we go. If you could grab only one weapon or item during a zombie apocalypse, what would it be?
Machete.
Machete. Okay. How about a favorite quote or phrase that you think about often?
Oh man, Jason, that was supposed to be lightning round, and I'm trying to think of one of my favorite quotes here. Um, can we come back to that one? I want to think about it a little bit more.
Okay. This is the last question. One
Okay.
book that has influenced your life the most.
One book. Honestly, one of my favorite books is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This book came out probably already 20 years ago. At this point, it was a series of books by a Swedish author, and of course, because I guess I'm a little bit more alternative in my styles, that I of course gravitated toward that book. I love the message. I love the main character, and just her different personality intricacies. But I think it's a great message because it redefines how we view heroes and heroines in our time, and just that they can look a little bit different than the standard that we're used to.
Very good. I love that. Love that. Okay. Last chance for favorite quote or phrase.
Speaking of heroes, I automatically, one of my favorite quotes, and I guess it's going to have to be paraphrased, Jason, was from the Marvel movie Doctor Strange. And one of Tilda, the old one, the ancient one, she once said in this very first movie that you never really get rid of your demons, you just learn to live amongst them. And I think that is a really profound piece of advice, because we all go through different things throughout our lives. And of course, we want and hope that the good things will outweigh the bad. And sometimes we have a hard time processing and getting past some of those dark moments. But I thought that advice was just very profound, especially just somebody who has to learn to live with those things, and that you do become stronger, more resilient. And I just love that message.
Excellent. Yes. Glad we came back to it because that was a very good end to the end of it. How can our listeners collaborate with you if they want to learn more about RM Creative Services or you yourself?
Everybody can feel free to go check out the RM Creative Services website at rmcsofficial.com. And our handle is the same across all the social media platforms. It's just at RM Creative Services. But my main platform that I like and usually go to right away is LinkedIn. So folks can also find me directly on LinkedIn, even through my personal profile or our company page at Arm Creative Services.
Excellent. Well, all that information located in the show notes. And I really want to thank Rachael for taking the time today to be on the podcast and get to learn more about her business and how it is helping those small businesses that deserve to be helped and have that brand really stand out, the underdogs in the world. And if you've loved this interview and you want to learn more about other small business owners that are out there supporting the small business community, check out this playlist located right up here in the screen if you're watching this on YouTube. For the rest of you and YouTube, until next time.